My family made me sleep in a kid's tent, while younger cousins got resort rooms, said I was too much of a downer for the group shirt. So I brought a guest to dinner that shut everyone up mid-bite and left the whole table speechless. I was standing outside the big family suite at the Scottsdale resort, still holding my duffel bag, when my aunt handed me the tiny neon green kids pop-up tent like she was giving me a party favor. Everyone else, my younger cousins, their friends, even my sister's boyfriend who'd been around for like 3 months, had already claimed their rooms. Real beds, air-conditioned, bathrooms. And here I was at 27, being told I'd be more comfortable out by the pool lawn in a child-sized tent. I honestly thought she was joking. I kept waiting for someone to laugh, for someone to toss me a room key, for my mom to step in and say, "Okay, that's enough." But she didn't. Nobody did. They just avoided eye contact like I was some awkward stranger who wandered into the wrong party. My cousin Madison finally muttered, "It's just, you get kinda negative on trips. We need the vibes to stay high this year." She said it in this soft, fake nice tone she uses when she's about to say something cruel and call it honesty. Before I could respond, she added the part that actually made my hands shake. "Also, we didn't make you one of the group shirts. You know, the matching ones for the big family photo. It just didn't feel fitting." Fitting. I didn't feel fitting. I looked inside their shirts, pastel pink, with a stupid little palm tree and the words Collins Family Retreat 2025. Even my 11-year-old cousin Luna got one. But not me, because apparently I'm a downer. I felt this weird mix of nausea and clarity, like something in me cracked open. All the years of comments, the eye rolls, the side conversations they thought I never heard, it all lined up. I wasn't part of them. I was tolerated. Barely. It didn't help that they'd just done a loud headcount to make sure the dinner reservation later that night included every single person, and the 2 extra cousins' friends they invited last minute, but not the person they stuck in a children's tent. My mom pulled me aside once everyone scattered. She said, "Just don't make a scene, okay? They're trying their best. Madison planned this whole thing and she's stressed." I think that was the moment I stopped expecting anything from any of them. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just nodded, carried the neon tent outside, and set it up exactly where they told me to, between 2 palm trees behind the resort, like I was a misplaced camper at a summer festival. But the thing is, when people show you exactly how little they think of you, something sharp and electric wakes up inside. And as the sun set over the courtyard and everyone got dressed for their big family dinner, matching shirts, big smiles, lots of "remember to tag me if you post," I felt myself getting calm. Not passive, not defeated, just intentional. I had already decided I wasn't going to sit through dinner quietly, and I definitely wasn't going to let them walk all over me again. So while they were busy taking group photos without me, I sent a text. Just one. To a person they absolutely did not expect to see. And when we walked into that fancy restaurant later, me leading, them following, every single member of my family froze. Forks midair, smiles collapsing, the whole table going dead silent, because the person I brought with me was the one name they swore I would never have the guts to involve. To understand why that moment at the resort hit so hard, you need to know what my family is like, and what I used to be to them. I grew up in Tempe, about 20 minutes from most of the Collins side. Every holiday, every birthday, every random Sunday dinner, we were together. And for a long time, I was the kid everyone described as easy. Quiet, helpful, never caused problems. I was the built-in babysitter, the one who took photos for everyone else, the one who ran to the store when somebody forgot sunscreen or wrapping paper or whatever. But somewhere around college, the tone shifted. My cousins started teasing me about being too serious, because I wasn't into the same party scene they were. Madison especially loved saying I had resting funeral vibes, which everyone thought was hilarious. I'd walk into a room and she'd clutch her chest dramatically and go, "Oof, the mood just dropped 10 degrees. People laughed. I pretended it didn't bother me. Then my dad died suddenly when I was 23. Heart attack, no warning. That changed everything for me. Not in some dramatic personality overhaul way. I didn't turn cynical or angry, but grief just made me quieter. Slower to laugh. It made me see through people easier, including my own family. But instead of meeting me where I was, they started avoiding anything real around me. If I mentioned missing my dad, they changed the subject. If I wasn't cheerful enough, I'd hear, "Oh God, here we go again." At my lowest, when I could barely get through the day, Madison joked that someone should stage a vibe intervention for me. My therapist later called it emotional distancing, but at the time it just felt like everyone was pulling away while I was drowning. Still, I kept showing up. Because that's what you do for family, or at least what I thought family meant. The annual Collins family retreat was supposed to be a reconnect year, mostly because my grandmother had started asking why she never saw me in the photos anymore. Madison planned everything: hotel, itinerary, shirts, activities. She sent out an excited group chat message with "Can't wait for all 14 of us to be together," and a bunch of emojis. 14. But when I counted the list, there were 15 names missing mine. That should have been the red flag. I even texted her privately, asking if the number was a typo. She wrote back, "Oh yeah, lol, I just forgot you. Of course you're included." Right. I pushed down the sick feeling in my stomach and went anyway. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself they wouldn't leave me out on purpose. But the second I got to the resort, the truth hit me in the face. The rooms were full. The shirts were already printed. And every explanation came with the same fake sweet tone, like they were talking to a difficult customer instead of someone they grew up with. The worst part? My mom didn't defend me, she didn't even look surprised, just tired, apologetic in the way that means, please don't make me deal with conflict. So yeah, when I stood outside that restaurant later, about to walk in with the one person my family had always been terrified to face, it wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was years in the making, and the guest I brought wasn't random. They were the one person tied to a secret my family thought they'd buried for good. Walking into that resort restaurant felt like stepping into a staged family commercial. String lights, soft music, everyone in their stupid matching shirts posing for the waitress as she snapped photos. And right away, I could see the empty chair at the far end of the table. My chair, not saved, not forgotten, just not there. They had organized the entire seating chart without me. My mom noticed me first, and did that pinched smile she uses when she's trying to smooth things over. "Honey, we thought you were getting ready in your, space outside. We didn't know when you'd show up." Space. She couldn't even call it a tent. Madison twisted around in her seat and said, "Oh, you're here," in a tone that suggested she was realizing she left the oven on. Then she looked at the person standing behind me, and her face drained so fast it actually made me pause. But I'll get there. Because the real escalation happened earlier that afternoon, before dinner, right after everyone left me outside with that neon tent like a stray dog. I'd been sitting there, sweating in the Arizona heat, scrolling through old messages just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. And that's when I found something I'd forgotten about. A voicemail. A saved one. From someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Someone whose existence alone made the Collins family extremely nervous. Listening to it again felt like opening a wound I'd tried to ignore. The voice was calm, steady, almost too composed for what they were saying. And as soon as the message ended, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I texted them. I honestly didn't think they'd respond. I definitely didn't think they'd agree to show up. But within 10 minutes, I got a simple, "Where and when?" My hands shook when I sent the name of the restaurant and the time. The reply came so fast it somehow made me feel both sick and relieved. "I'll be there." While my family lounged in their suites, taking boomerangs and drinking cocktails with little umbrellas, I sat by that tent trying to breathe. Every memory kept replaying, the jokes, the comments, the way they used my grief as an inconvenience. But underneath all of that was something bigger, something heavier, a lie they'd kept from me for years. A lie this person could expose instantly. By the time dinner rolled around, I wasn't scared anymore. I just felt ready, more ready than I'd felt for anything in my life. So when I walked into the restaurant with them behind me, I didn't look at anyone at first. I just walked toward the empty end of the table. Conversations faded. Utensils clinked. Then silence. My grandmother squinted. My uncle stiffened. My mom froze with her water glass halfway to her mouth. But Madison, she reacted like she'd seen a ghost. "Why is she here?" she hissed, her voice tight and cracking. The entire table stared, waiting for my answer. But I didn't say a word. Because it wasn't my guest they were really afraid of. It was the truth she carried, the truth they prayed I would never discover. And I could tell by the way my mom's face collapsed that she knew exactly what was coming. The woman standing behind me, my guest, was named Talia Ruiz, 32. Sharp, confident, always composed. And also, my dad's former fiancé. Yeah, not girlfriend, not someone he once dated. His fiancé, the one my family never told me about. You'd think someone would mention that your father had been planning to marry someone else after divorcing your mom. But no, my family had buried that entire part of his life like it was some shameful secret. And for years, I'd accepted their version of things because I trusted them more than I trusted my own instincts. Until last year, when I got a tiny message from Talia on Instagram. "I'm sorry for your loss. If you ever want the full truth about what happened, I'm here." I thought it was some scam. I ignored it. But apparently I shouldn't have. Because the second she stepped into the restaurant, my family reacted like she was radioactive. My grandmother's fork clattered onto her plate. My uncle muttered, "Oh, Jesus Christ." My mother's face crumpled in this awful mix of guilt and panic. Madison was the first to actually speak. "You didn't tell her, did you?" she demanded, looking not at me, but at my mother. That alone told me everything. But then Talia took one step forward, placed a calm hand on the back of my chair, and said in the most even, quiet voice, "Your daughter deserved to know who her father really was, and what happened the night before he died." The night before he died, my stomach dropped, a cold, sinking weight. My mother whispered, "Talia, please don't, this isn't the place." Her voice shook so hard the water glass rattled against her ring. But Talia wasn't looking at her. She was looking at me and only me. "You asked why I agreed to come," she said. "It's because you were never supposed to be shut out like this. You were never supposed to be lied to." Lied to. And then she said the words that slammed through the table like a bomb. "Your father didn't come to your graduation because your family told him not to." The restaurant went dead silent. I blinked. I actually felt the room tilt. My voice barely came out. "What?" Talia nodded, slow and steady, like she wanted me to take in every syllable. "Your mother and Madison told him you didn't want him there, that it would upset you. They said you were embarrassed by him." My mom shot out of her chair so fast it scraped the floor. That's not what happened," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You're twisting things, you." But I barely heard her. Because that day, my college graduation, I'd sat in the stands scanning the crowd over and over, trying to find my dad. It was the first big milestone since the divorce. I thought he forgot. Or he didn't care. Or I just wasn't important enough. It had broken something in me. I remember crying in the bathroom afterwards silently because I didn't want anyone to see. My mom told me maybe it was for the best. And now I was finding out he wanted to come. He tried, he asked for me. They kept him away. My mother stepped closer like she could somehow fix this with proximity. Madison kept repeating, "She wasn't supposed to find out. She wasn't supposed to find out." Talia didn't flinch. "She was supposed to know the truth, and she will." I stared at my family, the same people who told me I was a downer, who gave me a tent, who left me out of the shirts, and suddenly everything made sense. They weren't annoyed by my grief. They were terrified of what I might eventually discover. And this wasn't even the worst part. There was something darker coming, something even I didn't see coming until that moment. After Talia's reveal, the restaurant felt like it shifted into slow motion. People were still eating and clinking glasses around us, but at our table, nothing. No one breathed, no one moved. I could feel this hot, ringing pressure behind my eyes, the kind that usually means I'm about to cry, but it didn't happen. Instead, something colder settled over me, a kind of clarity I'd never felt before. My mother kept whispering my name, reaching for me like that would undo anything. Madison was spiraling, shaking her head over and over like she could physically deny reality. My uncle kept muttering, "We should talk about this later," like I was a toddler having a tantrum. But I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't confused. I was done. I pushed my chair back calmly enough that it scared them more than if I'd yelled. I said, "I'm going outside for a minute," and walked out without waiting for a response. Talia followed. The warm Scottsdale air hit my face, and I felt something inside me click into place. I leaned against the railing, breathing slowly, trying to process everything that had just detonated. "You okay?" she asked gently. "No," I said. "But I'm thinking clearly." And I was, too clearly. All the moments from the past few years lined up like dominoes, the jokes, the "you're so dramatic." the way they shut me down whenever I talked about Dad. The way they treated my grief like a character flaw. They didn't want me thinking about him because they were terrified I'd look deeper. Terrified I'd ask questions. Terrified I'd realize the timeline didn't add up. Terrified I'd learn the truth. I looked at Talia. "There's more, isn't there?" She nodded once. "But I want you to hear it on your terms." I stared out at the resort pool, the neon reflections on the water. My family was inside, probably trying to figure out how to spin this, how to salvage their reputation, how to contain the damage. And that made something harden in my chest. They had controlled the story for years, manipulated it, used it to shape how I saw my own father. Screw that. For the first time in my entire life, I felt a clean, sharp sense of purpose. Not rage, not chaos, just direction. Revenge wasn't even the right word. It was justice. Balance. Setting something right that had been twisted for years. I looked at Talia. "Would you help me expose everything?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." We walked to the far end of the courtyard where no one could hear us. She told me she had documents, emails, texts, even a letter my dad wrote the night before he died. Things she kept because she always assumed I'd need them someday. She also told me she wasn't the only one my father confided in. "There's a friend of his," she said. "Someone who knows what he was planning to do, someone your family definitely doesn't want you talking to." A chill ran through me, but I stayed steady. "What was he planning?" I asked. Talia shook her head. "I'll let him tell you, he deserves that." I took a deep breath. "Okay, then here's what we're going to do." I laid out the plan slowly, piece by piece. We weren't going to scream. We weren't going to throw drinks or storm out. We were going to dismantle their entire narrative step by step, calmly, publicly, and with proof they couldn't spin their way out of. And the first step: bring the truth right back to the table. I walked back toward the restaurant, feeling strangely calm. My family thought Talia's arrival was the worst part. They had no idea what was coming. Because the next reveal, the second twist, was going to hit even harder. And it was going to change everything they believed about my father's death. When we walked back into the restaurant, I could feel the whole table tense, like we were returning with a detonator in hand. My mom stood up immediately, whispering, "Honey, please, let's talk privately, this isn't fair." But for the first time in my life, I didn't react to her tone. I sat down. Talia sat beside me. I folded my hands on the table like I was attending a calm business meeting. "Before we go any further," I said, "there's someone else you all need to hear from." My family froze. Madison's eyes went wide. My uncle's jaw locked. My grandmother whispered something under her breath. They knew exactly who I meant before I even said the name. I pulled out my phone, tapped the speaker button, and hit call. It rang once, twice. Then a steady male voice answered. "Hey, is this a good time?" His name was Evan Delgado, my dad's best friend from work. A man my family had demonized for years, calling him unstable, dramatic, and obsessed with stirring up trouble. I grew up hearing that Evan encouraged my father's bad decisions during the divorce, that he was some toxic influence who wanted to pull my dad away from his responsibilities. I had believed that for years. Now I knew better. "Evan," I said, my voice steady, "they're all here, you can talk." A long pause came through the speaker. And then, "All right, the truth then." My mother whispered, "Oh God," and slumped back into her chair. Evan continued, "Your father was planning to change his will the week he died." The entire table jolted. "He was leaving everything to you," Evan said. "Not to your mom, not to the Collins family, to you and only you. He told me he'd already started the paperwork." A buzzing pressure filled my ears, but he wasn't done. "And he also told me he planned to file for full custody when you turned 18. He paused. "He said he couldn't keep watching them drag you into their drama." My breath caught. "Full custody? My father?" He continued, voice steady but heavy. "He said he'd already contacted a lawyer. He wanted you to move in with him and Talia. He wanted a clean start." My mother choked out, "That is not true. Evan, stop it." "It is true," Evan said, unmoved. "And you know it. You told him you'd ruin him legally and financially if he tried." My heart dropped to my stomach. Talia nodded quietly. "That's why he was with me the night before he died. He was terrified but determined." My uncle slammed his hand on the table. "None of this can be proven." "None of it, actually," Evan said calmly. "It can." He described a dated email from my father to his attorney, CC'd to Evan for personal record. explaining his intentions and asking to secure documents in case something unexpected happened. My grandmother whispered, "Oh, Tom," and covered her face with her hands. My mom was shaking now, tears streaming silently, but not the kind that came from grief. The kind that came from losing control. And then Evan said the part that drained the blood from every face at the table. "Your father told me he suspected they were trying to sabotage his relationship with you, that they'd been lying to him about you for years, and he said if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be an accident." The air left the room. My entire body went still. My mother whispered, "Hang up the phone." I couldn't, because suddenly everything made sense. The distance, the manipulation, the way they shut me out whenever I asked questions, the way they turned my grief into being a downer. They hadn't been managing my emotions, they'd been managing the narrative, and my father had known it. But what none of them realized was this: I wasn't done. I wasn't even close. Because the next part, the reason behind everything, was darker and colder than anything they'd admitted. I wish I could tell you my mother broke down and confessed in some emotional, cleansing moment. But that's not what happened. What happened was worse, because it was honest. When Evan finished speaking, the table fell into a silence so deep it felt like the entire restaurant was holding its breath. My mom's shoulders were shaking. Madison looked like she was seconds from fainting. My uncle kept whispering, "Don't say anything, don't say anything," like this was a legal negotiation. But my mother lifted her head anyway. Her face wasn't tragic. It wasn't devastated, it was resigned. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. Not an apology, not a denial, just that. Everyone stared. Even my grandmother couldn't speak. My mom's voice dropped into something cold, cold in a way I'd never heard from her, not even during the divorce. "You were slipping away from me," she said. "I could see it happening. Your father made you feel special. He made promises he couldn't keep. And I wasn't going to lose my child to a man who was reckless and unstable." Unstable. That was the word she always used. She said it now like it was a fact written on stone. Talia's jaw tightened. But my mom continued, like she'd been holding this speech ready for years. "You were 16, she said. 16, your brain wasn't fully formed. And he was whispering things in your ear, telling you he'd give you everything. Telling you he'd take you away from us, away from the people who actually raised you." I stared at her. "Raised me? As if he hadn't been my father." She kept going, voice steady, terrifyingly calm. "He wanted you to hate me. He wanted to win you. Everything with your father was a contest. He didn't want custody because he cared about stability. He wanted it because it would hurt me." My stomach twisted. I knew my father wasn't perfect. But my mother wasn't telling the truth. She was telling her version, the same version she'd been feeding everyone for years. "He was manipulating you," she said. "And yes, I stopped him. I told him if he tried to take you, I'd fight him for every penny, every asset, every visitation hour. And he backed off. He always backed off when things got difficult." My hands went cold, my chest tight. My mother leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on mine. "When he said he'd come to your graduation, I knew it wasn't for you, it was to get attention. To make a scene. To pull you back into his drama. So yes, I told him not to come. Because it would have shattered you, you were already fragile." Fragile, a word that felt like a slap. "And after he died," she continued, "I did what I had to do to protect you from his chaos and to keep our family together. You don't know what it was like dealing with him. You don't know how manipulative he could be, how easily he twisted the truth." I stared at her numb. Then she said the part that actually chilled me, truly froze something inside me. "If he had lived, he would have stolen you from me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Losing you would have destroyed my life. So if I had to shape the story a little, if I had to control what you heard or what he heard, then that was the price." Shape the story. Control what I heard. Control what he heard. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't conflicted. She was proud of what she did. I realized then that all those years she called me sensitive, all the years she acted like my grief was inconvenient, it wasn't because she thought I was fragile. It was because my grief threatened the version of reality she'd built. The version where she was the good parent, the stable one, the one who never lied, the version my father never got to challenge. And the moment I understood that, something dark and final settled in me. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated decision, built on fear, control, and ego. And now that the truth was out, my revenge wasn't optional. It was necessary. When my mother finished talking, no one moved. Not my cousins, not my uncle, not even my grandmother. It was like the whole table finally saw her without the excuses, without the spin, without the polished "I'm doing my best" mask she'd worn for years. I didn't cry. I didn't yell, I didn't shake. I felt settled, like everything in me had snapped into alignment. My mother waited for me to argue, to say she'd misunderstood something. She wanted me to give her a way out. I could see it in her eyes. But I was done speaking their language, so I reached into my bag and calmly slid a folder onto the table. Madison's mouth fell open. My uncle muttered, "Oh no." My mother actually took a step back. Inside the folder were copies of everything Talia had brought me earlier that afternoon. The email my father sent to the attorney about changing his will. Screenshots of texts between him and Talia about custody paperwork. His final handwritten note, the one he left with his friend Evan for safekeeping, in case something happened. I didn't hand it to anyone. I just placed it in the center of the table like it belonged to all of them. Like the truth itself was an exhibit. "You lied for years," I said quietly. "You didn't protect me, you protected your story." My mother whispered my name again, like she could still talk me down. "Sweetheart, we can explain." "No," I said. "You've explained enough." And then I told them what I planned to do next, slowly, clearly, with the same tone they always used when telling me what to accept. "I've already contacted Dad's attorney," I said. "He's agreed to reopen everything. If anyone interferes, I'll go public. I'll show everything, his messages, his emails, his letter, Evan's testimony, Talia's documents. All of it." My uncle's face drained. "You wouldn't expose the family like that." I looked him dead in the eye. "I absolutely would." Madison tried to jump in. "'Kay, wait, this is getting dramatic," but I cut her off. "No. What was dramatic was you making a matching shirt for the dog, but not for me." A murmur ran through the table. The waitress froze in place with a tray. "But this," I continued. "This is just accountability." My mother tried one more time. "What do you want from us?" "Distance," I said. "A lot of it." And then I delivered the final piece, the one that hurt them more than anything else. "I'm blocking all of you after tonight. I'm going no contact. If you want updates about me, ask someone else. You don't get direct access anymore." My grandmother started crying softly, but she didn't argue. The rest of them looked like I'd emptied their lungs. I stood up. Talia stood with me. But before I left, I added one last thing. "Oh, and don't worry about the family photo tomorrow." I paused. "You already made it clear I don't belong." Then I walked out. The fallout was immediate. My phone blew up for days with long paragraphs, accusations, apologies, gaslighting attempts, more apologies, threats of family shame, offers to talk it through, and one text from Madison saying I was ruining memories. I blocked them all. I moved into a new apartment a month later, started fresh. Therapy got easier. Breathing got easier. And Talia, she stayed in my life, not as a second mother, but as someone who actually wanted me to know my father, not the version my family curated, but the man he really was. The truth hurt, but the truth also freed me. As for my family, the Collins Family Retreat 2025 photo went up on Instagram a week later. They all smiled. Palm trees, matching shirts. And right there in the center of the picture was an empty chair, my chair. Honestly, it's the best I've ever looked.